All right, well, welcome back everyone to another episode of the Health Made Simple show. I am here with our host, Dr. Bart Precourt, who has been a healthcare practitioner for over 20 years, practicing a range of modalities, including chiropractic, acupuncture, kinesiology, functional nutrition and supplementation, as well as lab testing, all out of his clinic, Balance Health Studio in Seagrove Beach, Florida, as well as virtually all around the world. So he's also the founder of the Health Edge program, which is a cutting edge health program for entrepreneurs and executives who want to take their health to the next level. He's worked with athletes and celebrities all around the world. And tonight is going to kick us off with a couple of clinical insight from your awesome week.
Yeah, at least one, if not two. So the first clinical insight, I want to share kind of the whole story, a little backdrop here. Young lady, probably, I'm going to say she's early 30s, has a daughter. Anyways, that was my phone. Let me shut it off. Comes in, sits down, and I can just tell by look at her, energy was off a little bit. You can look at people and often be like, well, they're not having an awesome day, right? Their energy, their presentation, et cetera. So she was not having an awesome day. And our dialogue starts, of course, hey, how you doing? You taking care of yourself, et cetera. And that's usually how I start the dialogue. You're taking care of yourself, how's your health? Those kind of questions, kind of accountability type questions. And forgive me for the dogs here. So she says, well, it looks like I'm going to have to go on that antibiotic. I'm like, okay. So I said, well, we'll explain more, please. Tell me what's going on. She said, well, I still have this sinus infection. It hasn't gone away. It's been almost 10 days and I'm just going to have, it looks like I have to go on it. And I know her well enough. So Karen, this is an interesting spot. So, doing the type of work that I do, and especially for this particular situation, because this was a sinus infection, and I'll tell you why this hits home. And I've talked about it here, and it is pretty personal yet. In this situation, it's a very, very fine line as a practitioner. One, I always want to make sure that the individual in front of me knows they're fully supported and loved. At the same time, I want to challenge them. I want to challenge them in some of their small thinking. And we often think small when it comes to our health. In fact, we're often telling ourselves a very sad story.
Yeah.
And this was a sad story case. And sad for me is like boohoo on me. That's kind of sad I'm talking about. So I asked a little bit, of course I probe a little more. So how are you doing with the basics? How are you doing? And this is usually my beginning of my dialogue anyway. How are you doing with your nutrition? Are you exercising and all? How overall you're thinking? You're sleeping okay? Well, not so good. Which part of it's not so good? Well, I'm not eating that good right now. I said, well, you do know that if you eat sugar and have some alcohol and carbs and you're celebrating a little bit, unfortunately, you're feeding that bacteria. And that's really what an infection is. It's a bacterial infection. It's like, oh, and I saw this look of, oh, moment. So I figured, man, I can go deeper here. I can dive a little bit. She's open to the conversations. Yeah, she went a little deeper and said, it's so stressful. I've had this thing for several days. It just won't go away. And I hear that right there so often. And the part that I wanted to create an observation for, nothing else. It wasn't my job to flip her position on this. And it's never my intention. But observing how we go about thinking about our health is part of, in my opinion, my role. Doctor means to teach, right? So in this situation, so do you have to? Or are you choosing to? And she chuckled. She's like, I guess I'm choosing to. And I said, well, before you choose to do that, maybe there's some other choices you can make prior to that. And maybe you wouldn't have to go on, because we have had the conversations. We're literally just trying to heal our gut at this point from other antibiotics.
Yeah.
So I asked her a little bit. So I said, you're drinking much? She said, yeah, I'm drinking a lot. I said, so, well, what's the drinking for? That's what I asked her. So what's it for? So, well, my daughter's in town. She's home from spring break. And she's young, this girl. So she's in her 30s. So she had a daughter when she's young. So her daughter's home from spring break. It's driving her crazy. So she's drinking every day. I know. So we chuckled. We laughed. And I'm like, all right. So I don't even need to comment on that part. And I'm like, how's it eating?
Yeah.
I said, how's the eating been? She's like, well, I'm trying to fit in with my daughter. So we're eating like a college kid every day. I'm like, all right. So you're eating beer and pizza every night. And she's like, yes, 100%. So as we went through all of this, it was really interesting. And the self, perspective that she had all of a sudden just changed.
Yeah.
And so she had a little different perspective from the I have to what am I choosing? In this dialogue, she wasn't, prior to getting that far downstream, we talked a little bit about it. I said, well, there was a point I was just going to leave it and just say, okay. And I told her, any way that you choose, know that I'm here for you. If you want to continue to fight this naturally, I have more and more remedies that we can do, and we can modify your diet, your nutrition. We can starve it out. It's just a bacteria. There's so many ways we can do this. And if you choose that you're going to use an antibiotic, no, I still got your back. And we're still going to create a protocol. We're going to use a very specific, I use a very specific type of probiotic called Zymax. There's several things that we do that then help the body deal with whatever is best needed at the time. So in that, I had to find this little window to keep it real for her, because she's in this mess because she was using antibiotics. So I said, well, this one kind of hits home for me. And this is still a little, listen, I'm sure I have family members are going to hear this, and no one really wants to hear this part of it. Well, maybe they do, but here's what's really happened. And one of the reasons that antibiotics and sinus infections are a little bit, they hit home for me. So we've discussed it here on our show that a couple of years back, my brother passed, my younger brother. And part of what happened in that, there was some bad medical decisions that took place. Yet prior to that, there were some bad personal decisions that took place. Several times a year, he'd get sinus infections. And every time he got one, he'd go to the doctor and received an antibiotic. And we talk about it all the time. So, Chad, you got to be careful with this. If you keep doing this, there is such a thing out there called, antibiotic resistance.
Yeah.
And then what happens is you create these super bugs. And this is real, Karen. This is a problem not only for the antibiotic user, but for the non-antibiotic user.
Yeah. Oh, it is. And I mean, the medical community, the traditional medical community, acknowledges that we're starting to see this. We're starting to see antibiotic resistant strains of
all
things
over the place. And it's typically happens when you use, and this is exactly what took place with this young lady. You use around antibiotics, you get good results, or you get no results, but often you'll even get good results. And then after 10 to 14 days, if the bacteria wasn't completely wiped out, comes back, a little bit of a vengeance. So they switch the antibiotic typically. And now you blow everything out and you get no results. And your third antibiotic, they usually look for the atomic bomb, which is Cipro. And this is exactly where this girl was. So this
she'd already taken it for the sinus infection in the beginning.
She'd already been there prior. And now we were headed toward another, like the same thing was going to repeat itself because these sinus infections didn't go away. And ironically enough, I had just had this conversation early in the day about a UTI. Precisely the exact same thing. Microbiome up, microbiome down. Anyway, so I shared with her what happened with my brother was that after years and years of using antibiotics as a way to get rid of his sinus infection, he developed antibiotic resistance unknowingly. And then when he went into the hospital for some other situation, which was essentially a big, massive misdiagnostic mess. And when that happened, they had to give him antibiotics when he was in the hospital because he had a little bit of a sinus infection that started getting worse because he was getting treated for something else. They gave him an IV antibiotic, which that then crossed the blood-brain barrier and it let that bacteria from his sinuses go right into his brain. And he got a bacterial infection in his brain. He died in a couple of days. And that is real. That's as real as it gets when we talk about what happens with the overabuse of antibiotics. And in the same sentence, I shared with this young girl that antibiotics at the same time might have been one of science's best discoveries ever.
100% when it's used.
100%.
There's lots of when it is used.
What it shouldn't be being used for, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, is things like the routine sinus infections, and these routine infections that we can, by changing our lifestyle, get a little bit better. So that was part of it. And that was the clinical insight, all of it. But really the takeaway on this clinical insight, one, I want to share with you is sometimes your doctor has to get real with you, and hopefully, and this was not comfortable nor easy for me. Well, I take that back. It's comfortable and easy because I set the stage and develop a relationship with most of the people that I work with. And I know a lot of men and women out there do that. And sometimes it takes time and repetition. And I've seen here over the course of a year, So I have a little bit of that rapport built in. If your doctor does challenge you on that, be thankful you have a doctor like that.
Most don't.
I know, but if you happen to, be grateful. So, and she did say at the end of it, as we were both like a little bit, quite frankly, we were both like a little thrown back by having that conversation. And she gave me a big thank you. Like, thank you for keeping it real. That's what she said. But and
she wouldn't have, she one part of her knew that she didn't really want to take them again. Like there was one part of her when she started that conversation that didn't really want to have to take antibiotics again, right? Like,
100%. She knew she was taking and for her, I can say this, she knew she was taking the easy route out.
Yeah.
She knew she didn't put the work in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And listen, if you know you don't want to put the work in, then just roll the dice. And it is a little bit of Russian roulette, but just take your chances. But if you're not going to put the work in, she was I know she could do it. She's raising a child by herself. She can take a little bit, stand on her health, right? So this is what I want everyone's takeaway to be here is this. Listen, stop telling yourself a sad story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh, poor me. I got to do this. I have to. Blah blah blah.
I have to versus I choose to. I mean, take the power back. You are choosing. Yes. We're choosing a lot. In both our countries, we've got a lot of choices when it comes to some of these things.
So what was interesting, and I say the sad story because in her mind, the infection was just shit, whatever. When I questioned her a little bit, drinking every day, eating crap, going to McDonald's, hanging out at the pizza, shop, whatever. It wasn't a sad story then. Then it was just, these are a bunch of bad decisions here when you're not feeling good. So that was my first clinical takeaway. And a different note here, but similar, but different. Young lady, this was last week, near the end of the week, young girl I've been taking care of for a while. She says, Doc, I hope you don't mind it. I'm constantly referring you to some people. And recently, this one girl that, I'm trying to refer wouldn't like, she's not taking action. She's not coming here. So I recommended some supplements for her. And I said, interesting. I said, that's fantastic. What did you recommend? She's like, okay, good. You're not mad. So she wanted to tell me the whole story. And so she was like kind of testing me to see if I'd be like, no, you got to like, and really what she did. So we've worked together. We've done a lot of things with, one was her acne. We did a lot with the hormones, but it started with hormonal acne. And there's two things I use all the time. One's called Chase Tree. It's an herb. It's fantastic. Another called wheat germ oil. And wheat germ oil helps bind hormones. And two together, quite frankly, are home run when it comes to hormonal acne. So she recommends these for a friend of hers. And her friend is getting these amazing results. And now her friend comes back to her and says, well, how about, and starts to fill in the blank with, how do I fix this? And how do I fix this? And she's like, no, I don't want to be a doctor. So listen, you can help people. You don't have to be a doctor to help people. Yeah. This is not sacred information. So everyone listening here tonight, or you listen to a replay, if you learn something that's good and it works for you, I don't care if it's exercise or being kind to somebody or a train of thought or words that you use, if they're good for you, share them with the next. And I know some of my practitioners don't necessarily agree with me. If you're using healthy things from, like diets, and I don't even want to call them diets, but food from God's garden, and using whole food vitamins and whole food supplements, you know what? There's a lot of other things that can cause a lot more damage and harm. So your story matters. And most of you out there that are taking action in your lives, believe it or not, someone is watching you and someone's learning from you. And never discount that. There's a good chance that the young woman, that if she had come to me, because I'm not a female and I didn't have acne when she saw me, wouldn't have had the same impact.
Yeah, that's true.
This was her coworker.
Yeah.
She was working with her. So she saw that she had acne. She saw that she was 50 pounds heavier. And when she saw that change, she's now a walking testimony. And then, of course, so for those of you that are making strides, don't hold back your information. Share away. Like that's part of the reason I do this type of a podcast, this type of information. It's not so we hold it tight and you have to, just pay for a visit or something like that. This is so we can continue to literally spread the love. So that's always music to my ears. And the point there, is that your story matters. In what you're doing, people are paying attention. You're always leading in one way or another. That's the reality of our lives. So those are my two clinical insights.
And even when you might want to influence somebody else in their health, and you feel like they're not listening, like if you like, often they are watching if you get your own results.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and I think most of us, or not most of us, but oftentimes we have a little cynical, you know, like this cynicism to us. Like we question, we doubt because maybe we've tried things before and they didn't work. They weren't quite as stacked up as they were sold to be or whatever it may be. But then all of a sudden, when people are taking action and getting results, that's when people pay attention.
Yeah, 100%. No, I love it. Awesome. Some good clinical insights for sure. Awesome. Well, should we move on to a couple of these questions?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Just before we do, can you repeat we've just got a question to repeat the hormonal acne supplements. What were you talking about there?
Sure. There's an herb out there, you know, and again, of course, I'm not treating anyone for anything, but there are a couple herbs that we use. There's one herb called chaste tree, phenomenal herb. This, quite frankly, is one of my favorite herbs for women. What I will tell you, I use this herb just as much for acne for young, like boys and men and stuff like that, really younger kids that are hormonally imbalanced. So it's chaste tree is an herb. And then there's another one called wheat germ oil. Little disclaimer here. They make your hormones work better, AKA you potentially are more fertile.
Okay.
That's the same part of the same protocol I use when I'm helping women, you know, do the best that they can to make their bodies more fertile. I'll use those same two things.
Okay, awesome. And I've just posted the link for you guys for those. Okay, awesome. All right. Well, our next question here is, I've really struggled with weight loss. How do I know if I have insulin resistance?
Okay. My guess is that maybe they've listened to one of our shows before when I've talked about insulin resistance.
Yeah, we've talked about insulin resistance. Yeah.
I talk about it a lot. And I think it's one of the things that is kind of plaguing our country. It's so easy to test for. So that's one of the ways you can run a lab test for this. Sometimes it's called the HOMA-IR, insulin resistance. That's what it stands for. So there'd be two things if you're really, that's the gold standard, you test for it. Yet there's a lot of symptoms, Karen, that would also be indicative of insulin resistance. Oddball ones, high blood pressure could be indicative of insulin resistance. PCOS could be the same thing. Erectile dysfunction is part of this category. Skin tags is part of this category. Infertility.
Anything else or just insulin resistance?
There's some thyroid connections to skin tags as well. Yeah, but often it's skin tags. And nice thing is that they can go away as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's a lot of outwardly symptoms, obesity, especially obesity that comes along with, moderate diets. That diets don't necessarily reflect the weight gain that's taking place, because once you have insulin resistance, you're going to essentially gain more weight, especially in the fat cell, than you would if you did not have it. So it is something really, any of your doctor, you could simply walk in your doctor's office or whatever and ask them. Most people that are doing functional nutrition, functional medicine are already testing for this because it's so important. And there's other markers too that we would look at. Again, this would be a little bit of a deeper dive for your practitioner, but one of the reasons we run all those panels together, like your thyroid as well, that we can see some funky things in your thyroid panel with insulin resistance. And then your cholesterol panel gives us other indications. So there's a lot of things together. And then sometimes, Karen, I'll come back and the score on the insulin resistance will be relatively good, but I see all the writing on the wall. I see all these other symptoms, and we'll say, all right, we're going to act as if this is on its way, and we take the measures to help it out. And we've talked about that. We've talked about insulin resistance in many of our podcasts and the things that we can do for it. So it's, in my opinion, as practitioners, it's very, very treatable. It's very fixable, and it really could be, especially if you're having that really stubborn weight loss. We talked about this just a couple weeks ago, I think. Beyond food, some of the things that could be happening, and insulin resistance is right on top of that list.
What about if you test your fasting blood sugar and that's normal? Could you still have insulin resistance?
You could, absolutely could. Yeah. So I like that as well. I like getting a feel for testing your fasting blood sugar levels. Yet you absolutely can have insulin resistance and still have, at times, you'll have normal blood glucose levels.
And what about is it weight gain in a particular area or anything? Sometimes we've talked in the past about weight in different area can mean different things.
Yeah, when it's insulin resistant, so typically it kind of goes like this. If it's just around the waist, we're usually looking at a stress-induced, hormonal-induced, typically like a cortisol.
Okay.
If we see full body, we're usually thinking, man, there's more of a metabolic issue here. The whole body's not working right here. It's not just the hormones here. And that'll often include things like your thyroid gland, like the arms are starting to get weight. And that's what we'll see with obesity as well. We'll typically see more full body, but with the insulin resistance, as a result of that insulin starting to dominate, you're producing more and more of it to get less and less results, we'll often see some muscle wasting. So we'll start to see smaller structures like, little, like the shoulders become less broad. For guys, the chest is not as much, muscle in it. The glutes start to shrink. Your butt shrinks for men and for women. So you can see this clinically, especially the butt shrinking. That's when we know that you're dominating in, blood sugars and cortisol, stress hormones, insulin instead of testosterone.
Yeah. Okay. And there's things that we can do if you are, yeah.
Yes. That's I always want that to be the prominent message. Every time we talk about insulin resistance, this is a very fixable, and I don't even think it's that hard. This is where there's a lot. Again, I would probably suggest, getting with someone like myself or someone else that knows the sequence of events that one takes, the strategy to lay out. Yeah, intermittent fasting, using appropriate herbs, helping getting your blood sugar levels in balance, and down regulating the craving of carbs and stuff like that, because those are all going to they're going to go higher and higher and higher as your body's extracting less and less nutrients. And that's one of the bummers that happens in insulin resistance. You extract less nutrients, your body stores more in fat cells, and as a result, a lot of times the appetite can go up even though you could be eating. So there's this double whammy here. So we start to, the best we can, we want to regulate those. There's a great herb called Genema that downregulates sugar. Yeah. Simple things like using cinnamon in your coffee, using cinnamon in your, your shakes. There's a lot of really, in a smoothie. There's a lot of effective things that we can do in here. So usually when we map it out, people are almost like, well, this is doable. This is a very doable, strategy. Especially when you think about the other end of it, the obesity that could happen. So I want to make note here, though, that it's not just for the obese. You absolutely can be skinny and have insulin resistance. You absolutely positively can. That's part of the metabolic syndrome. Your body metabolically might not be working properly. We'll see some muscle loss there, and that's where some of the terminology of skinny fat ties in there as well. Yeah. And I think I've shared here on a podcast, when I first tested myself, I wasn't necessarily insulin resistant, yet I was like in the 50 percentile, and I'm walking around at 12% body fat. So,
wow.
So my exercise and my diet, I was getting away with it. But because of 4 decades plus, since I've really done a deeper dive into my nutrition, I woke up with cereal, so milk and cereal, sugar, peanut butter and jelly for bread, for lunch. And then at night, maybe pasta, potato, whatever. So I'm not saying that's what it always was, but that was it the majority of the time. So wouldn't it make sense for most of, in our country here, aren't you headed toward it? If you're eating 80% of your caloric intake is coming from a simple carbohydrate, not even a complex, like a simple carbohydrate, you're on your way.
Yeah.
Pancakes can only do so much. Yeah.
100%. And so how do we test that? Sorry,
it's a blood test.
Okay.
And so that's probably the gold standard, Karen, that something called a HOMA IR, or just say insulin resistant test.
Okay.
And insulin resistance. And there's other markers we look at. There's one other that I almost always like to see with that. It's called fasting insulin. And you get a simple score.
Okay, for that, separate from fasting blood sugar again.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
Real quickly on the fasting blood sugar, though, I still monitor my blood sugar, my ketones regularly. It keeps me in check. I know that I've got, I'm 52 years old, and probably, let's just say 42 years of that have probably been a diet that consists of at least 80% carbohydrates daily. I think that's being pretty accurate, even though they were like, I was eating good things. I'd have smoothies, but I'd have 2 bananas in my smoothie and a fruit and all that kind of stuff and a bunch of protein. So I keep a close eye on it because as easy as I can get it fixed, it wouldn't be that hard for my body to go into old patterns.
What do you think of the things that do your blood sugar all the time? You know, like I don't know what they're called.
Yes, the continuous glucose monitors.
Yes, continuous glucose
CGMs,
monitors. Yeah.
CGMs. I absolutely love the technology. I'm not going to wear one.
Okay.
I think, I don't know that I would get used to something being stuck in my tricep or so, whatever.
Yeah.
I love the technology. A lot of people that are in my, concierge program, I encourage them to get them so we can, download that data and use it to learn from it. So there's, the beauty today is so many really neat, cool, reasonably expensive, reasonable costs to really gain some great data. And I think I've shared here before. I have one client who every time she left her house, her blood sugar went through the roof. It jumped 20, 30, 40 points.
Yeah.
This was an outside of food issue with weight loss. This was, she was having anxiety every time she left the house.
Yeah.
Real things. It's just,
crazy. Goes to show how much we can affect these biological things with our mindset, right?
Oh,
we
absolutely.
see blood pressure all the time. I mean, that's like a white coat syndrome or whatever they talk about. You can change your blood pressure like that, depending on how you feel. But interesting to see you can do it with things like blood sugar level as well, blood glucose level.
Yeah, fascinating. And that was the first time, that was a real eye opener for me. Even though as long as I've been doing this, I know that there's always been things that affected it, yet didn't think that there could be things like that. I thought it would have to be much more of a stressful situation, yet perception's everything.
Yeah. Perception is everything. Yep. All right. Next questions along the same lines. How much protein should I eat daily? I'm 125 pounds and exercise 5 to 6 days per week. Okay.
So how much? All right. So I get this question. I think we had another question, Karen, that was wrapped around like, how many macros should I be eating?
Yeah. What is the ideal amount of macros? So similar question. So let's talk about macros because people, what is the ideal? Is there an ideal?
Let me just describe what macros, micros, and proteins just for quick. So macros, think of your fats, your proteins, and your carbohydrates. Those are macros. Your micros are things like your vitamins, your minerals, any extracts. So I would even put things like your essential fatty acids and stuff like that into that category. So, but vitamins, minerals, herbs, all those guys. Well, not really herbs, but vitamins and minerals. So we have these two groups, and we focus really on, a lot of emphasis is put on the macros. And I get asked this question all the time. And when I say all the time. And my general consensus answer is, I don't want you counting at all.
Yeah, okay.
I don't want you counting at all. Now I have certain people that just need to have an answer here. So for those people that need an answer, I'm going to slide around and give you a little bit of an answer about protein intake. And so I do a couple things. One, I read the research, and then I have my physical body, which is just like an N+1, means it's a research of one, right? And then I have 25 years of experience of working with people, and then, being in a gym and, a gym rat all my life, all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to put all that together and make these suggestions. So right now, the science is telling us, and again, I love science, and there's sometimes I don't love science. Yeah. One of the reasons specifically about protein, more often than not, we are talking about using animal meats as proteins.
Yeah.
And when that happens, so I'm gonna slide two conversations today: macros and proteins. How much should we eat of either one? Like how much we measure them. When we do that, we'll see a lot of different, literally opposing black and white science.
Yeah.
The good news about this, when you see that, know that the true answer literally lies most likely right in the middle.
Yeah.
One of the reasons there's black and white, and I understand there's this confusion sometimes with nutrition, is because it's very difficult to have a true experiment on humans with nutrition. So for example, the meat ones, the majority of the meat and protein ones that I get to read, one, they're not always grass-fed. And now
probably never grass-fed.
Used to be never. There was like 2 recent research ones that included, I think they said grass fed. And I don't, that would be everything though. But every cow eats some grass.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other part that's not taken in consideration there is that people who eat meat versus vegetarians typically then also have a subset of habits that are different from each other. The meat eater will gladly or more likely eat the French fries.
Yeah.
Okay. Just collectively looking at that group, the person sitting down having a burger, which is going to be on the meat category, is going to eat the bun and the French fries. But the bun and the French fries are not considered in meat studies.
Yeah.
They're just saying, how much meat are you consuming?
Yeah.
And it's always compared to non-meat eaters, people who are just eating a plant-based or vegetarian diet. So when we compare those two, it's very difficult to say, well, which one is really, really accurate here? But this is what I've learned over the years. So there are some ways to measure. So for some people that are, I will say this collectively, I find as women age, they become more and more deficient in protein, literally. How do I know that? I talk to all the women all day long about how much protein they're eating. They're not eating enough. Simple. No. They're not eating enough. They're not eating enough to maintain muscle mass.
Yeah.
And that is a massive issue when it comes to fragility, when it comes to longevity. So collectively, I say that women need to be eating more protein. If I had to come up with a number, this is how you would come up with a number. Then I'm going to give you my clinical experience on this as well. If you had to come up with a number, if you could learn your lean body mass,
okay,
that you'd have to go do your body fat analysis, and you, like I have, and I just happen to have a chart here. And if you guys, those of you that are watching this, it literally is crinkled up my gym bag. We have this thing called an InBody, and that does a body composition analysis. And in that, it'll break down for you total body weight, skeletal muscle mass, lean body mass. So for me, and I'm going to use this number here. So I'm roughly 166 pounds of lean body mass, body weight 184 pounds. So what that tells me, roughly, I could take that number. If I know that number, I could cut that in half, and that would be, so 166 divided by 2, what's that, 82 grams? 82, that would be roughly the amount of protein that would be good for my body on any given day.
Okay.
82 grams. Now, many schools of thought are a pound, 1 gram for each pound in your body. I think that is way too much. We learned how damaging that could be to the body. Karen, without going into too much,
that would be 180 grams for you of protein.
Listen,
that would be huge, right?
Huge. You can flip onto another podcast, and they're going to be telling you to do this all day long.
Okay.
So there's different reasons. There's different ideologies here. What's your intention?
Yeah.
When it comes to your protein, right? So if you want to stay healthy, you want to stay lean. So I'm not trying to put on muscle mass. If I was trying to bulk up and be a bodybuilder, or go from 184 pounds and go to 200 pounds, which I could force my body to do. If I start eating, 200 grams of protein a day, that's how you'd go about it. But it doesn't mean it would be healthy. We do know things. There's something gets activated called an mTOR. mTOR destroys your mitochondria, and that comes from too much protein consumption. So that's one benchmark. So there's another way you could just say half your body weight in ounces is a benchmark for you to use, the same that if you're exercising hard one day and you're wondering, like, where should I just kind of be? And we do meet benchmarks, because that benchmark will probably tell a lot of women that, or a lot of people in general, mostly women, you're way under proteined.
Yeah.
So let me kind of go farther on this. Now, with all that being said, I have done that where I have said, all right, I'm going to try to eat, for every lean pound of muscle mass I have, I'm going to eat 1 gram of protein, 160 grams of protein in one day. In one day, every now and then, I could do that. There's no way I could sustain it. No way there's just no way I could physically do that. My digestive system would completely quit on me.
Yeah.
So, and what is reference? So I'll give you a reference. So typical serving of chicken is about 3 ounces.
Okay.
That would be like in the palm of your hand. A full chicken breast is about like 6 ounces, but I don't think, like, Karen, you wouldn't eat a full chicken breast.
Yeah.
Like you'd eat about the size of your palm of your hand, and about 2 of those would be, or 2 or more would be like the full chicken breast.
Okay.
If you ate a full chicken breast, that'd probably be about 50 grams.
Okay.
Okay. So when you think, so for a lot of women, the target, let's just say you're a 140-pound woman, half your body weight is 70 pounds. There, a lot of days you should be getting close to 70 pounds, 70 grams of protein.
Grams of protein. Yeah.
Which means you'd be having to eat that entire chicken breast that day plus.
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of women fall short. I think they're falling short of that number. They might eat a little bit here and a little bit there, and that's okay. And when it comes to, say, things like the red meat and stuff like that, usually it has a little bit, like ounce for ounce, a little bit of a higher protein content.
Yeah.
Yet in general, I just find clinically a plant-based diet that incorporates God's garden, that has a variety of the animals, fish that run around, the animals that run around the garden, and the fish that come in the water in the sea, and eating those on a regular basis, meaning that we're bringing them in, but not hoarding them, not counting them. Clinically, and I've done this, I used to give numbers. I used to, Karen, I want you to eat 75 grams of protein and 10 grams, blah, blah, blah. I don't like doing it. I find that that creates almost like a food psychosis, a food jail. I like the awareness. I like literally knowing, well, how many grams of protein are in chicken? Well, if you have about a normal serving size, you're going to get about 20 grams. If you have a burger, you're going to get about 30 grams. If you have an egg, it's 6 grams. You have an avocado, it's 3 grams.
There you go.
So like there's ways to get protein. So just having a reference there and saying, are there any days of the week that you add up to 50? Are there any days of the week that you add up to 75 or 80? You know, you went hiking for 4 hours, or you're out working in the yard for 4 hours. You're lifting all these dogs all day long. Are you getting that many grams of protein? So protein is no doubt incredibly important for our brain. It is important for longevity. It is important for our muscles. We have to have it in our life. Those essential amino acids, that's what they're called, essential amino acids. Those essential amino acids make up the building block for a protein. They're essential because without them, you die, and your body doesn't make them. So when we go into the fat world, there's something called essential fatty acids. Same thing. Yeah. You don't have, if you don't get them into your body, if you don't eat them, then you die, and your body doesn't make them. When it comes to the carbohydrates, there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate.
Yeah.
So I think we can just take that data right there and get a little bit more intuitive with our ways about eating, and, you know, use some of this data. Sometimes we do, like, you know, our lab work, look at iron levels and whatnot, and know, because we know historically women are a little bit low in iron. Where do we get iron? Best sources: red meat, dark meat chicken, dark meat turkey. And those are typically the 3 that are not on the list. It's the leaner. So to that conversation of 125 pounds, exercise 5 days, 6 days a week, how much should I eat protein? There's this individual should be probably consuming at 125 pounds. You know, we're talking about 50, 60 grams, most likely several days a week. And on days, if they're like doing CrossFit and there's tissue breakdown, you know, we're talking about, that's the scenario. We might get up to the entire lean body mass in numbers.
And what about protein powders? Can we use those?
We can. You know, I'm obviously an advocate of, because I consider protein powders a little bit in the supplement world. Yeah. Because cooking isn't always readily available. We can do it on a run. There's a lot of good, healthy sources, and clearly we use them quite frequently. Yeah. I still think there's just something else to be said about getting, you know, protein from your avocado, protein from your egg, from your food. And listen, I have an entire business with, you know, with those protein powders. Yes. So clearly I'm an advocate of it. I think they're great for us on the run, but not as your entire protein selection day on day.
And then what about the other ones then? Like, is there a fat, you know, is there a minimum amount of fat we're meant to get? Or obviously, I mean, I guess we're talking about probably not a minimum amount of carbohydrates we're meant to get. But what about the other?
I'm glad you asked that question. So here's the beauty of it, Karen, that everywhere in nature, if there's a fat, it's coming with a protein.
Okay.
If there's a protein, it's coming with a fat everywhere.
Yeah.
The nature always provides the two of them together. So if you go out, you go elk hunting, you're going to get a certain amount of fat with a certain amount of protein. If you eat an avocado, you're going to get a certain amount of protein with your fat.
Yeah.
So all of them always come together. So
Okay.
I don't know that we have to try to outwit nature.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Eat from God's garden.
Yeah.
We might have to clean our body up and get things regulated right and get our microbiome back on track and down-regulate like our sugar receptors and that stuff so we can make some good, healthy decisions. But the truth is, I'm not giving a number for fat either. And I'm probably one. And listen, I do consider myself someone who works in the health and fitness world. Like this is my realm.
Yeah.
Yet the moment I give those numbers and we target that, the truth is, Karen, you and I are different. Every one of our listeners, everyone who's going to be listening to this live or on a recording, we are all subtly different. But the better we get at listening to our bodies and experimenting, I love experimenting with my body.
Yeah.
So the experiment recently has been having the availability to my grass-fed burgers, chicken wings, because it's super high fat. There's literally wings we make at home, and at least once or two different times per week for dinners. A lot in the past, when I had protein, it would be like tuna and chicken during a day, and often my nights consisted of just vegetables. Yeah. Or and I loved it. I love a big green salad with all the things, especially what my wife makes. There's like 50 things in there. It's just awesome. And I just eat it and I feel great.
Yeah.
Now I've been open to eating more proteins. And I think hands down for both my wife and I think I could speak for her. It feels good to have some extra animal proteins back into our diet. Even though we were eating in theory super healthy before, I think it's good. I think it's going to help us both as we age, continue to hold on to some good, muscle mass. You still got to use your muscles. But I think it's important for all of us, especially that if we've been on a little bit of a health journey, sometimes that's the part that gets kicked out of the nutritional part. The diet is the animal proteins.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, awesome. We've got another question here. Does it matter if I take pill or liquid supplements? Is there a preferable one?
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. So let's go like this. So when we talk about like your vitamins and your minerals, they're going to be pills. That's how they come in nature. Like that, they're going to be best used that way. Notoriously, that's how they're always used. So you want to use some kind of whole food extract. Yet, when it gets to herbs, this is a whole different world. So, Karen, you're over there in Australia, and which has literally one of the finest, the finest herbal company in the world.
Yeah.
Called MediHerb. And it's interesting, when I talk to my colleagues over there, they're always wondering why the practitioners here in America don't use more liquids. And the general conclusion is that here in America, we have been conditioned to take pills.
Yeah.
We take a lot of medications. We take more medications in our country than the rest of the world. Right. That's right. I said that right. Our country takes more medications than the rest of the world.
In the whole rest of the world.
Yeah. So we're really good at popping pills. So it's easy for us to bring them in. And we don't like things that don't taste good. So
no, and these do not taste good.
Yeah, so liquid herbs, I take it back. I think you learn to love them. So let me.
I'm not there yet. I'll put my hand up and admit.
Yeah,
I'm not there yet. My MediHerb mix that somebody's made me. I'm not there. Well done to you. I need some more time.
So, but to answer that accurately, there's an advantage to using the liquid blends.
Yeah. Okay.
Most of the stuff that I use and we recommend, a lot of the other practitioners out there, especially if you're using standard products, they're whole food herb. They're whole food vitamins, minerals, and desiccates, and they're easy to digest, but they still require digestion. That's reality. When you use an herb, you don't have to release the same stomach acids. So the action happens easier and faster.
With a liquid than with a pill of the same, even if it's the same herb.
Yes, same herb. Now, it might not be a stronger action, but it happens easier and faster.
Yeah.
So the manufacturer MediHerb swears that they are the exact same strength and dosing will have the same impact in the body, but easier to digest and faster. And that is good for people. Now, the other part, so what we can do with liquid herbs, and here in my practice, we do a lot of blending of herbs, Karen. It is liquid magic when we can find an individual who has, let's just say, a sleeping issue and they have pain.
Yeah.
Or they have pain and therefore they can't sleep. We can blend. So we have a tonic that we use called Chill Out Tonic, for example, which is phenomenal. Resets the hypothalamus gland. We use California poppy herb in a liquid version. California poppy herb is phenomenal, sedative. It's a pain reliever. So people have a little bit of pain at night. They go to bed a little bit anxious. It's phenomenal. There's a lot of people who are anxious but go to bed because that's when they have the most pain. We use a little bit of licorice in there, which especially for females, it's an amazing tonic it's an adaptogen herb. So we are able to blend, all these different tonics. I have another one. I'm trying to think some of the ones we use. We have so many. We have a brain tonic, phenomenal. We use Korean ginseng, which creates stamina. People forget about when we're brain. We all want our brains to work better and better, but Korean ginseng is one of the absolute best for stamina in the body. Okay. And then we connect that, and here I'll explain this in a moment. So we have in the brain tonic, there's Korean ginseng, eleuthero, which if you looked up eleuthero and like you Google the benefits of eleuthero, everyone would want it.
Yeah.
And then we put ginkgo and bacopa in there. One's great for short term, one's great for long term. So now I just mentioned 4 different herbs.
Yeah.
All of which would require a pill minimum, most likely 2 each.
Yeah.
Or 1 little half shot.
Yeah. And also you've got 1 bottle as opposed to having 4 different supplement bottles, right? You can just take your tonic.
Yes. For those of the people that are listening, they've been to my office, they see literally in my room, we have like in the room, there's all these different tonics. We have, what else? We have a chill out tonic. We have an immune tonic. We have a menopause tonic. The immune tonic is phenomenal. It's echinacea, which pure echinacea is one of the most hardcore herbs to swallow. Okay. But I put it with astragalus, which is one of the most gentle herbs to consume liquid wise. And astragalus is absolutely amazing in its effect on the mitochondria. So we're so much conversation about mitochondria replenishing and repairing. We'll put those 2 together along with some other phenomenal ones for the immune system. Again, like Korean ginseng for the stamina. Most people that are having immune issues are also exhausted. So we can blend all of those. There are some heart formulas that we use using hawthorn. There's some, mother's wort, which a lot of these herbs, people have never even heard of them, but their medicinal effect, amazing. Yeah. So to that question, is it better pill or liquid? I think there's advantages. There's times for both. Let's put it that way. And that's something that you want to get with your practitioner and find out when is the best opportunity. And then compliance is always huge. For me, I just convince them that if I want them to take a liquid herb, because I don't want to add 4 more bottles, and I need something to fast act like tonight, like if I want something to make sure they can sleep or help them regulate, blood pressure or something like that, I just convince them that it's good for them and they'll get over the taste. Because I know everyone has done a shot of whiskey or, Jägermeister in the cash. You know what I mean? Like they're still drinking.
Jäger doesn't taste good.
No, so like everyone's done those things for silly reasons, never mind for health reasons. So, and what's interesting is that, I think most of the time it's all about results. You start getting results and then you're like, well, this is.
You just take it. I was complaining about the taste, but it doesn't stop me taking it. Yeah. I just make a fact every time.
Yeah. And we're privy to the taste. So what we can do is we use licorice a lot, or we'll use marshmallow root, and those are both sweeteners, but they're also medicinal herbs. They're fantastic for us. So we use those. We can tone down anything. I like it a little more hardcore. I feel like I'm getting, this is doing something if it really gives me a little bite.
Surprise me, yeah. But the rest of us will take the tone down. I love it. Awesome. All right, next question here. Do you think the 80-20 rule for nutrition is a good plan? What do you think about the 80-20 rule? 80% of the time, I guess we're doing good. 20% of the time, we're kind of letting go.
Yeah, I kind of chuckle. I don't like this at all. It's,
okay.
Not at all. And this was one that I said that might surprise people when I say this. So I say it like this. I only hear, there's two things I like. I'm not a big fan of. I don't like when people say, yeah, I follow the 80-20 rule. No, I don't like that. That basically means that you don't want the 80%. You want the 20%. That's what you're looking for. And that's what that really means, Karen. I never hear someone's that's on a health journey and says, yeah, I'm going to follow the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
It is simply people that are just fighting and kicking and really don't want to put in the extra effort and the disciplines. And someone's getting mad at me saying that, but that's the truth. Here's what I would say. I would never plan for anything, not in my athletics, not in my personal health, not in my relationship. I wouldn't plan for an 80-20. Like, I'm going to do, I hope this works out 80% of the time. No, especially with like anything. If we're talking about health, wealth, and relationship, the same disciplines apply to each one. I would never say in my relationship, man, if I get 80% good here, if I do 80% of the time good, my wife should really like me. No, right? Like I got to shoot for
20% of the time.
Right? I got to shoot for 100%.
Yeah.
That's my goal. That's my intention. That's my strategy. That's my plan, knowing that there's a solid chance I'm going to fall short of it.
Yeah.
With the intention being 100%. I equally do not like the term or the phrase or the idea of moderation. I also think it's just a massive cop-out. And then again, people are going to say, no, that's not true. Moderation. No, listen, you shoot for 100%, knowing that there's going to be fallout here every now and then. And you don't attach your ego or you don't attach any guilt or shame with the fallout. You simply go right back to it. There's no such thing as drinking in moderation. There's just not. There's no level of moderation of alcohol that's good for you.
Yeah.
So there's no, like, for me as a practitioner, if I say, well, moderation is good. Well, what moderation to one just means they can drink as long as they don't die, then they're fine.
As long as they're only having 2 beers a day.
Yeah. So that moderation, the 80-20 rule. And again, this is 25 years of experiencing human behavior. That's really what that is. So not a huge fan of it. I like the idea of shooting for the stars. If you fall short and land on the moon, you're still awesome.
Yeah. Love it. And I think though, that piece of like, don't beat yourself up if you don't get to the 100 though. Cause I think sometimes people use the 80-20 or moderation kind of thing almost as if you're using it to not shoot for, got it. But if you're using it to forgive yourself when you're not perfect, maybe, I don't know. Because
yes, I would agree.
The other side of it, if you're like 100%, I mean, some people get like, they're super beat themselves up then if they have done the 2%.
Yeah, and that's why I really mean that when I say it. Like, listen, shoot for the stars, knowing that there's a likelihood you're going to fall semi short.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you only shoot for 80%, you're still going to fall short.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the reality. So shoot for the stars. Do not get wrapped up in it. If you can learn something from it, awesome. And then the moment you're doing whatever. So listen, my wife and I went out to celebrate a birthday the other day, and we know the people in the restaurant, and they sent us cheesecake, right? So my intention is that I'm God's garden 100% of the time, period. That's my intention. Cheesecake.
How was the cheesecake?
Yeah.
It's delicious, huh? Yeah.
It was damn good.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome.
So that's what I mean. It's not about the perfection. It's knowing that we'll probably fall short. Something will show up, and you just get right back on shooting for the stars.
Oh, love it. All right, we've got a question here. Can excessive garlic ingestion be detrimental to your microbiome at all?
To the microbiome, not so much the microbiome. You really have to look at if it's prolonged use of garlic. It's really about the liver that we got to look out for. Okay.
And excessive, I mean, how much would you have to take to be excessive?
Just the amount that they're saying excessive. It means abnormal amounts that no human would normally eat repetitively.
Is it, if you eat it in like is it different if you're doing garlic supplements as opposed to the garlic clove? Like, can you do?
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, it really is. So, all right, let's clarify that as well. Eating it, you probably couldn't eat too much of it, quite frankly. If you're eating it raw, now, if you eat it raw, it's still pretty powerful.
It's intense.
I've showed the examples of where I used to, when I would train and I would get like ringworm, and I would literally I would tape it with a Band-Aid, raw garlic, to my skin. to kill it, to kill the
Wow.
worm. And in my early days of not knowing as that smart, like how to go about it, I remember I left it on overnight and it literally burned a hole in the back of my tricep and it's still scarred. That's
Wow.
how powerful garlic is.
Okay.
So if everyone ever questions like its power to break things down, and what it had to break down, it had to break down the microbiome on my skin, and then it had to beat up the skin and eat the skin. Literally, I don't know which one it is. It's I don't know if you can notice it.
Yeah, it's hard to see on the screen. I think it was the other one. I think it was
Yeah,
the left one.
I definitely have permanent scars from garlic. So raw garlic consumes.
What a claim! I have scars from.
Yeah. Now that doesn't happen in your intestines.
Okay.
Because you're going to digest it and it's going to
Stomach
move.
acid. So, yeah.
But the note of, and I use garlic part of almost all my yeast protocols and a lot of gut healing type of protocols, especially when I'm doing the 4 stages of gut healing. When I'm doing that, I use garlic. And I'm also mindful that I'll use garlic supplements because they're much, much stronger. And that's the whole idea of the supplementation. So you're going to have that therapeutic effect. Very, very effective therapeutically. I love garlic. It's like nature's antibiotic. 2 months at a time. And then I'll always pull people off for like 2 weeks at a time. I'll go back on it. And I'm okay with that. But I always have a pause when it comes to garlic supplementation. Yeah, clinically, I've never seen anything. I've never read anything about just consuming it as detrimental. Yeah.
Yeah. I think with everything, it's easier to, overconsume if you're taking it in supplement form, right? Then the actual food tends to be harder to overconsume.
And especially when we're talking about an herb, herbs have more of that medicinal effect. So we do want to be mindful of how and what we're taking, and having some education and knowledge or some direction on that. That's a smart, play when it comes to herbs.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, cool. Well, we've had some awesome questions. We're almost out of time here. What's going to be our one action that listeners can take to move them towards their goal of becoming superhuman?
It's going to be to create an exciting story. No sad stories.
Yeah.
So we're always telling ourselves a story all day long. I have to do this. This happened to me. Create an exciting story. Talk about how awesome you are. Talk about literally try it. So it's in another conversation I had today with a young lady, a sad story was happening. And then I asked this young lady because everything, and this is what happens. They start to have to, perspective. And then next thing you know, they start to look at everything and everything looks like a dark cloud. Relationships look bad, finances look bad. And I asked this is actually a different girl. I'm blending all these in my brain. A young girl here was having relationship issues, financial issues. She's doing the same thing, a single mom. I said, when's the last time you did a list of how awesome you are?
Yeah.
Never. She didn't actually say never. She said, I've done that. She said, it's been so long though, I can't even remember.
Yeah.
So, this is just a story. You're telling me all these things, but literally she's in front of me and this girl smiles all the time. She's beautiful. She's working it out, raising a daughter, like all of this stuff. I'm like, this is a superwoman.
Yeah.
The story that we tell ourselves over and over again, eventually we start believing parts of it. So I think it's important that we come up with like this super badass story about ourselves. That maybe you just tell yourself, but listen, just like whatever, just make it a super badass, exciting story versus a sad story.
I love that. That's an awesome action for everybody to take from this episode. Well, guys, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate you. We will see you back same time, same place next week for another episode of the Health Made Simple show.
Yeah. So once again, thanks everyone for doing what you're doing, sharing it out, spreading your knowledge, helping other people. Always know that it matters what you're doing. People are always watching. So keep doing the thing, keep sharing the love, keep spreading it out. And of course, take deliberate action for your mind, your body over wellness. That'll be awesome.